Hey, everybody, it is Radley here with the Angel Tarot Show. If you are listening to this, so glad you could hear us on mindbodyspirit.fm. If you are watching us, it is so great to see you on YouTube. So we have a really super fun event for you today. I have astrologer and lightworker extraordinaire Elizabeth Pendleton with me today. Now, Elizabeth and I go way back. So she's been intimate with my astrological chart for many more years than I am willing to admit. But she is an amazing astrologer, a lovely person, and a friend. And so Elizabeth is here to talk to us a little bit about what is going on astrologically for the rest of 2023. And we're going to tie that into some archangels as well. Like what kind of energy is happening for that particular month and what archangel might be really great to help us with those kinds of energies, be they challenging or blessings. So, hey, Elizabeth, welcome.
Hello, and hello to everybody watching and listening. Welcome, and very nice to connect.
Yes, it is. So, where do you want to start?
Well, in preparing for the show and knowing the beauty, wonder, and randomness of the interwebs, I was like, these things can come out. And, to listeners, the first thing I would say is even if you're watching this in October, it's like that's when those messages are supposed to find you.
Right.
So we're recording this the 14th of July, and we're at the beginning of two of the year's biggest shifts. Which are the nodes, shifting the nodes of the moon, and we'll talk about that. And then Venus going retrograde in Leo, which hasn't happened for 8 years. Venus goes retrograde, but it hasn't done so in Leo for 8 years. So those are some of the key signatures of the whole year. So as we're recording this, those are getting underway. And so we can talk about like how they're playing out and then maybe put them even in the context of this very big year that has seen the key things leading up to this, which would be Pluto. I'm really curious how you experience Pluto dipping into Aquarius. It's now back in Capricorn when we're recording this. And of course, Saturn going into Pisces, which I've found so far to be so much more relaxed, like so much more like, because it's Saturn, right? The planet with the ring, and we think of it as structures or restrictions, depending on your perspective. But in Pisces, right? So mutable water, the flow, the integration, the nebulous kind of quality. So that's just been such an interesting one. But my first impressions of it, and I'm curious about yours, and for people, viewing and watching along, that was March 7th. March was kind of a big month this year. It's both when Saturn and Pluto made some changes, and that's kind of big. But I'm curious, how has your first experience, and that's with the Saturn thing, even though it's retrograde now through November 4th, it will not be going back into Aquarius now for another, 28 years or so. So how have you noticed it, or because you're mutable? So
Yeah,
mutable sun sign.
Saturn has not been my friend. I really haven't enjoyed Saturn this year. It's a Saturn year for me. And there's been some in my personal chart, some not fun dances going on with Saturn. So I have called it jokingly and not jokingly being under the oppressive thumb of Saturn.
It's no joke.
Right? And so it's like, for me, it's all about structure and discipline and really putting the screws to me about, am I doing things the right way, the conservative way? Am I being a good steward? Am I and what things do I need to change, in particular in my business? how I do business, how I interact my company. And so it's been intense. And I think it's going to, for me, be intense until February. When things start to get better, Saturn start to like just move on, little doggy move on.
From those degrees in your chart.
Go away.
It's like,
Thank you
I
for your
know.
advice and consideration. Goodbye.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hilarious. I mean, I don't want to throw the term survivor around, too lately, but I have to, if I couldn't make light of Saturn, you're talking to, we were talking about it before the show. I just finished my second Saturn return and it was a monster.
Yeah.
It was, by the end of it, even all my natural resilience was just move on. Exactly. So I know where you are. It will move on and then hopefully mellow out. And the thing is, the resource there, I feel like for people, it is in such a spiritual sign, so you
Right.
do always have that ability to reflect inwardly and apply, because we can think of all this great quote spiritual stuff, or what I've seen it show up for clients so far is really putting their creative and spiritual aspirations into a practice. That's probably one of its best forms, because Saturn is that structure that says, okay, if you want to, whatever it is, be a better meditator, right? It's almost a cliche, but anybody who's really trying to spend time with that goes, yeah, well, like I have the attention span of a gnat. And so Saturn, being that container, and just figuring out where that works in someone's life, and going, okay, like I can give that time, time, Saturn, Chronos, chronological, and put that there. But also I feel like the other beauty of it is the cracking open emotionally. So we can look at the blocks when they come up, or the resistance. And Pisces, it'll just make you cry, you know what I mean? If you go into like, what story am I telling myself? Why am I getting myself so upset? Why am I
Do I
being
like this story?
yeah, and of course mutable, how do I change it? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it if we can let it soften, and that said though, Mars did just go into Virgo, so we're gonna get a Mars opposition to Saturn in these next, we're like, because they take a while to back into each other and become exact. So I'd say from this, mid-July to mid-August period, where you do feel the rough, Martian energy, where it is a struggle, you can kind of work on that. I always look at them as a continuum. So if we have Mars at 3:00 in Virgo, and Saturn at 9:00 in Pisces, it's not that you have to pick one or the other. You just find your place along that continuum, and go, okay, how do I use the logic of Mercury ruled Virgo? How do I work in there to maybe get some specific guidance, but then move it over to the softer side of Pisces and then find my little Saturn container for it, And so there are just ways to work with, I think, the energies as they come. But
and for me, it's like, I think that when the energy is like that, a really great archangel is Shamuel, because I love Shamuel, because it's like I talk all the time that I think when I was being taught by the teachers that I had, Shamuel was a little bit like sort of relegated to the whole concept of finding my car keys. It was like the eyes of God. He can find anything that's lost. And Shamuel is so much more than that. And Shamuel, for me, his beauty is the archangel of personal peace. Finding your personal peace while we have this Mars energy and this Saturn energy, and living on this spectrum that you're talking about. It's like having an archangel that can just help us to breathe and go, okay, I'm just going to be at peace. It's going to be okay. Maybe we throw a little Jophiel fuchsia pink in there to keep our thoughts positive, so that we don't tell ourselves stories we don't like. And it's so easy to do so when there's challenging energy in the sky that kind of puts us in this space of, oh my gosh, everything's wrong, everything's wrong, everything's wrong, rather than, well, it's not wrong. It's just this moment in time where I'm learning something and I'm going to do it from a place of positivity and peace.
Yeah, so well said. And that's the thing, that Martian energy can feel really hard, like cutting, piercing,
Yeah.
like I started out having a good day and then boom, this thing comes in and it's just, triggering me, or um, wasn't in the daily kind of how I envisioned my day. But then, like you said, calling in the Archangel, refocusing the story and knowing you're so much bigger than any specific thing that comes up in the day. That can be a point of reflection or not, or you can just say, you know what? I'm not going to let that hijack my day. It's just a thought or just a situation. I can manage that, or maybe put it off for another day, whatever it is, whatever is going to be the best thing in that moment. And then go, what was my vision for the day? What did I call the angels around me, this morning? What were you intent on doing? And then just go right back on track,
Right.
and just, I'm reading a really good book called The Choice Point, and it's about all the thoughts, that we're having during the day, and how and it's so funny because it's in such like the psychological language, but it is saying how if we are aligned with an overall purpose or intention, things will come up that want to divert us. And that feels very Mars and Virgo, right? So that piercing, jumping right in the Mercury ruled sign. So the thought that wants to hijack us or run away, for, make us run away from what we intended to do. And it's just great sometimes to see it in that other academic language of no, like if you get back to that center, then you can choose what you engage with in that much more peaceful place, from that centered place. And it doesn't seem like a conflict anymore. You're like, oh, I saw that one. No, you don't. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's, and there'll be, as we're kind of flowing into the conversation, we got a couple more Mercury retrogrades this year, and that first
Yeah,
one's
okay. So that
yeah.
makes people panic. So I think a
Okay.
little bit, but so
Okay.
tell people why they shouldn't panic about a Mercury retrograde.
Oh my gosh. Well, one, we have them 3-4 times a year, right? You
Right?
guys, old hat.
Exactly.
You back up your hard drive, which we all know we should do anyway. And maybe look, I always recommend people know their chart to the best. And what I also always, I just say to everybody, like, we're all still learning, so because I know some people, the thought of first looking at their chart, it's just overwhelming. They're like, what are all those
Right.
symbols? And so start to learn your way around the chart. But as you get better, and again, we're all in evolution. I can read a book that I read 10 years ago and get a new insight, you know what
Of
I mean?
course.
So it's just another layer. But if you start to look at your chart and look at the house, I'm really big on rising sign, and knowing that, because that will tell you where the retrograde is. Is it in your 10th house? Is it in your 5th house? And so that is going to be very different. And, is there a strong aspect to something else in the chart that retrograde is activating? And that just kind of helps give you your bearings, so you know which area to kind of be mindful of, or to say, let me maybe minimize the potential for disruptions, or is it again another point to reconsider some things there? Is something coming up in my 7th house that I really should review, and rethink of how I'm interacting with it. So, if we think of Mercury, yeah, which I love, I'm glad we actually got on to Mercury, but let me hold that thought. It is a in a retrograde, it's there for reframing. If you think of all your re words, reconsider, reframe, rethink, revisit, then it's not so scary. You're just review, uh, we just get to step back and specifically if something we're considering like, oh, it went wrong, that's we can go, what is that? Or how am I even defining that? Is that actually the case? Or is this like, again, another opening to look at it differently and then consider my options and, maybe change plans moving forward or tweak things.
Okay, so these Mercury retrogrades are when?
Oh, let's see. I got some notes here. So the first one we're going to get starts on August 23rd, just as the sun goes into Virgo. So it's just got it's Mercury in its home, which is Virgo, which is all the specifics, details. For writers, this is an amazing time for edits. Look at it too, Radley.
I figured.
I know, I didn't even plan that. And then it's till September 15th. And for those who do specific degrees, it's starting at 21 degrees of Virgo and going all the way back to 8 degrees of Virgo for people who know their charts well. But if that's all gobbledygook to people, don't worry about it. It's just in Virgo, which is communication, and it's one of Mercury's homes. It's mutable earth. And the image, and this is where it's really fun to riff with you. One of the images that always comes to me with Virgo is I always see this really nice, like thoughtful lady in her pantry, and it's around, the time where we change into the autumn here in and she's looking and just saying, okay, what do I have? If I'm going to make some recipes or do some canning, what do I need? What am I low on? What do I have a lot of? And then what can I make from the things that I have? And it's such a gentle image, but Virgo goes through the pantry, it assesses, instead of just going out to the grocery store or just hitting a bunch of buttons and ordering stuff. It's so thoughtful, it's like, oh, if I'm going to make some curry, then I need, my cardamom and my curry powder and it checks, oh yeah, I'm almost out of that. And it's just kind of it is kind of a little analytical, and people could say picky, but that's again part of that shadow stuff that I think, like, if we find ourselves getting overly that way, that revisiting, we got Saturn that will be opposing the sun and Mercury to go relax, let's find the place on the continuum.
Yeah. Yep. So to me, because we've got this whole issue of communication, so that to me is Gabriel. So helping us to be in this space where we have the perfect words for everything that we are saying, and the ability to communicate accurately and clearly with other people. But also, I think that from that whole assessment standpoint, that Virgo standpoint, that makes me want to think of Uriel, because Uriel is so analytical. I mean, he's more than that. But a lot of people really focus on the analytical aspect of Uriel. And, I love Uriel. I've got my gold heart right here, but, he can help us to really analyze things and really understand from a soft way what is going on right now. Because Uriel, the other thing about Uriel that I love is that he's the Archangel of transformation. And if we look at a Mercury retrograde, in particular Mercury retrograde in Virgo, where we're looking at the details and things, it's like, we can take this opportunity to be annoyed by it all, or we can take this opportunity to learn something and help it to transform our lives moving forward. So why not do the latter? So for me, Gabriel and Uriel, the communication, making sure that we're being understood and that we are understanding, and also being able to analyze what's happening to us.
Yeah. And that reminder of, it's the day-to-day details that make up that bigger picture and the day-to-day choices. So I would say, one of the hits that I was getting as you were saying that is like people saying, well, I have this bigger life goal of, X. And this is such a good aspect for reflecting upon, okay, on a daily or weekly basis, what am I doing to further that goal? And which things am I doing that are really undermining it? You know
Mm,
what I mean? And
right.
not in a mean way, but just to, like you say, assess and go, okay, well, let me slow down on that thing that's not helping the goal, that's actually pushing it away or blocking it. And maybe I can work on, and maybe there's an archangel to work on when we want to, Pisces has this, association with addictions, and,
Mhm.
how getting too nebulous and not having enough structure. So that idea of, as that we roll through that retrograde, um, saying, or being reminded of, wait, what is the larger picture, and what am I doing, Virgo daily habits, that's in furtherance of that. And it could be a deepening of your spiritual practice, it could be buying a new home, it could, going back to school, whatever it is, but helping us see that we can be more and more in alignment with it.
Right. So what's next?
Oh, well, so if we finish up with our little friend Mercury, the
Okay.
next
Yes.
one, I was thinking of you when we did this, because I was like, so we get one that starts at the during the Sun Sag cycle, so on December 13th.
Oh.
Um, I know. Well, the good news about this one, it goes direct on New Year's Day. So I'm like, yay, we start
Oh.
2024 with
That's
Mercury
cool.
going
That is
direct.
really cool.
I know. And Jupiter goes direct like 2 days before it. So I was like, oh, very nice. Just whatever we're finishing up by that time, or again, that review period. And think about this, like, I mean, obviously, one of the big cultural things is, I mean, we get busy with the holidays, but it's also a time when a lot of people assess or plan for the next year. So
Right.
this one's going to be going back and forth between Sagittarius, and then it's going to retrograde on the 23rd of December back into
Oh,
Capricorn.
oh, in the
And
Capricorn. Oh.
yeah, so that's right. Hold on, wait a second. You just said that's right. It starts in Capricorn. I'm so sorry.
Okay. And then goes into
And it,
Sagittarius. I'm like going, huh?
I know. She's like
How's
Elizabeth's
it
math.
doing that?
Mine,
Okay.
how's it doing that?
So we're
No,
going to go into
starts,
Capricorn, go back
we're
into
gonna
Sag.
go back into Sag on the 23rd of December, and then it will go direct on New Year's Day. So it will be, let me find that one. I got that one. So it will be back at, it will start at 8 degrees of Capricorn, and then it will wind its way back to 22 of Sag by the end of the retrograde. So that's what I was excited about. We're starting the year with Mercury and Sag, and I was like, I kind of like that. That's such an optimistic note. Mercury going
It is an optimistic note. And
just as Jupiter goes direct, like 2 days before. So I was like, oh, Jupiter doing the
oh,
right
wow,
things,
that's
Mercury.
very Jupiter Saggy. For people who
Yeah,
don't know, Jupiter is ruled by Sag. So that's they love each other. They're very happy together. So I really like that. You know what I also really like about that too, though, is that the holidays, I think, for us, or at least for me, are a reflective time. It's like I'm not always successful, Elizabeth. This doesn't always work, but I try as best I can to make December the month that I don't have big things to do.
that
And
makes
and
sense.
because it's my birthday, it's my mother's birthday, it's Christmas Eve, which is my favorite day of the year. It's just a lot. And I've worked so hard all year long, and I almost never take a vacation at all. My team yells at me all the time, but it's like in December I try to cocoon. I really try to like hide, and so I like the reflectiveness of that. I also kind of wonder if that happening, the Mercury in Mercury retrograde
Capricorn.
starting in Capricorn, might keep people from overspending, or
Yeah, yeah,
maybe.
that, and that's that, evaluation of, again, our friend Saturn.
Yeah.
But also just as an earlier, again, and not to go into the like cliche Mercury retrogrades, but yeah, this would not be the one where I personally would want to be doing cross country traveling. I mean, December 13th to New Year's Day,
Right.
Mercury retrograde, or I'd have just lots of contingencies or just be prepared, because it's a heavy time of travel anyway. And that is like something Mercury rules, and the Sag aspect as well, long distance. So that one, see, that's where we can look ahead and go, okay, we don't have to freak out or get scared about it. But if we know we have options, you travel with your, little trail mix or your backup, power source, or just, you just kind of know I'm going into that, hopefully everything's on time. But if it's not, I had a good thing about the travel insurance or whatever it is. But that is, that overlap definitely jumped out on that really practical level. But I like your idea in that, hitting that winter solstice period too,
Oh,
so
right.
powerful, like for reflection and going inward, that darkest moment, knowing that the light's going to return and thinking ahead of like, what are we going to be doing with that time? And then Sag, of course, the possibilities and the blessings of Jupiter. And yeah,
Yeah.
kind of putting it out there for that coming year.
So I am really, really, really glad you brought that up, because I generally do not travel in December, but you're right. A lot of people do. And so knowing this completely changes what I might have said from an archangel standpoint. So Archangel Raphael is an archangel that most people generally associate with physical healing. But Raphael has a side gig, and that is that he is the archangel of travel. And this comes from a non-canonical book that just basically means it's an old text that didn't make it into the Bible, but where it talked about Raphael having been sent on a task by the divine that included going on a journey with someone. And so Raphael is great for if you're going to be traveling. And in fact, I found some little angels of Raphael, just little tiny angels, and I throw them in my luggage so that my luggage gets where I need it to go. And but he can help to smooth out those kinds of obstacles and challenges. I think Michael is great for safety, protection,
Yeah.
things not breaking, so like planes, and
Yeah.
therefore you don't go anywhere. But, I think Michael and Raphael would be really, really good for that. But also, I would throw in a third and say Metatron. And the reason I'm saying Metatron is because Metatron is sort of the archangel of time. And so if we're running late, if we're like going, oh my God, my plane left late, I only had a 45-minute time frame to switch planes, I'm going to barely make it, asking Metatron to help us to stretch out the time so that we will get to our connecting flight on time. And it's not just also about airfare, airlines. It can be any kind of travel
Oh,
where
yeah.
you are having these things. But if you're going to be traveling during this time where Mercury's doing a dance, then those are the angels that I would suggest. If you are not traveling, then I'm going to throw you in a totally different direction and say Archangel Jeremiah. And Jeremiah is the archangel of life review. And here we are at the end of the year. And here we are in this moment where a lot of people are celebrating, but and maybe I'm just wrong, but it is impossible for me to be in what I call the season of light. So I don't care what it is, if you call it Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever you call it. The season of light to me is just so reflective. Thus, the winter solstice, this whole moment of what happened this year. We're getting close to the end of the year. And so we start to look backwards right before we do look forwards. And so there is something magical about this Mercury retrograde being when it is, and being in the signs it's in, of this whole aspect of where was I this year? Where do I want to be next year? Jeremiah helped me to make that assessment and to make choices for myself that are going to be choices of joy for 2024.
Yeah. And I think that area that it's moving, that Sag archetype of here are the possibilities. And it's Jupiter ruled, it's expansive. It's where that inkling of excitement just gets planted. And, there's just a joy that comes with that inspiration and a motivation. And then where the Capricorn part is helpful is, again, it's Saturn ruled. So it gives us, again, a structure. And so when Mercury starts moving ahead, it will then finish out Sag, and then we'll get to start putting all those ideas into place and into practice when it rolls through Capricorn in January. And so we get to like, oh, that's what I was excited about. Now I get to like try it on, and start to implement it. So that's one of the nicer aspects of, the Capricorn, piece of that. It's like not just in hope and aspiration, it's being able to apply it to really practical and pragmatic points.
Right. Okay, so what else?
Well, the other two biggies between now and the end of the year, the biggies, I would say this Venus retrograde that is just getting underway.
Yes.
And the nodes shifting, and getting into their Aries Libra part. So whichever one you want to explore, we can,
okay, so
take it from you.
No, go to Venus. Go ahead.
This Venus. Okay, so Venus retrograde, that is technically going to be from July 22nd to September 3rd. But we've been in it. We've been in this since June, when Venus first entered Leo, probably about June 5th or 6th, and then it leaves on October 8th. But for the people who are a little deeper into their astrology, they know there's a shadow period for a retrograde. And so we've been in that since June 19th, and we don't leave that until October 7th. So, it's Venus, it's in Leo. So there's, again, for those who have their chart and can figure out where that's going on, which house that's more helpful, but some general things to think about. Venus's desire, what we love, what gives us pleasure. It's also in Leo, which is highly creative, expressive, is not afraid to lead and to get out there. It's got like the, it's heart rules the heart. So it's courage. It's the lion who says, if you guys aren't going to start the parade, I will, and so I would look, it's also super playful. I don't think astrologers talk about that enough. And it's so, time in your life where if you're feeling a little stuck or like it's all just chores or duty and responsibility, one of this can be looking at is, where can I bring in a little more fun, a little more play, or make a little more time for things that I really enjoy doing? And you'd be surprised by just cracking that open and getting to have that experience a little more often for yourself, how it brings you back to the duties and responsibilities with such a refreshed, we call it recreation, right? Recreation, because we then come back to the job, to whatever, refreshed, ready to with a completely different attitude. So I would look at that. And what's exciting about this one is that Uranus and Jupiter are 90 degrees away, roughly speaking, in Taurus. So this one's going to be activated. And one of the best parts that I felt, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this, is Mars was just in Leo all the way up till the 10th of July when it went into Virgo that we were just talking about. And I was like, oh, we just dodged one with Venus retrograde not having a Martian element in there. Because this is, yes, it's a square, it's going to square Jupiter and Uranus each 3 times. So if you think of back to my clock, Venus is at 12 o'clock and Jupiter and Uranus are at 9. I do that so people can visualize that 90-degree angle. And squares, a lot of times astrologers are like, oh, the squares, they bring things to a head. And they do. But to me, to have Mars having left that, think of Mars has gone on to 10 o'clock. So it's just not creating that kind of tension. Jupiter being there is such a more positive aspect for what do we unearth that we can revision in a positive way and see those possibilities and start playing with them more in our lives, so I'm liking that there's a really dynamic element to this because Uranus, it is the change maker, and it will be squaring Venus 3 times during this whole period. So really June, July, August, September, which is such a long time for Venus to stay in one place. If people can see anything that seems like a disruption and then reflect on it a little further, it's like, okay, that piece of the puzzle is changing or needing to be moved. It maybe wasn't fitting into the place I thought it was supposed to go to. Where do I want to, put that now?
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like people don't like change. With all of my Sagittarius, I kind of eat it like Fruit Loops for breakfast. But most people don't. Most people don't want things to change. And so I feel like, it's like this thing with if we're going to have this change maker, interacting with Venus, our desires, our happiness. So it's like, well, what does that look like and how do we perceive it correctly? So this is bringing me back to Jophiel. It's bringing me back to this.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at things through rose-colored glasses, but I mean that in a positive way.
Yeah.
See it in a positive way and go, this is all going to be okay. There is a reason for this. And I have a deck that is coming out next year. You and I were talking about it. It's an affirmation deck. And one of my absolute favorite affirmations for myself personally, I have 2, and the 2 that I use all the time, and I put them in the deck on purpose because when you think of an affirmation deck, you might think of lofty stuff, and there's a little bit of loftiness in it, but there's also just the now. And one of those affirmations for me is, I am all right now. Right now, everything is okay. Because one of the things when we see change is what we do is I call it future tripping. Okay. We start tripping out over the future. And so it's like trying to stay in the moment and go, I am all right now. Right now, everything is okay. And the other one is, everything will work out. It always does.
It always does.
It always does. And it's like, I think people forget that. But if you, and there's always going to be an exception to everything, always. But for the most part, no matter what challenge we had facing us, no matter what thing we were afraid was going to happen, in the end, most things always work out. And so when we're looking at these changes, it's like, right now in this moment, I am all right. Everything will work out. And just to kind of be in that space about change and looking at it from the standpoint of a positiveness with Jophiel and maybe a little bit of Uriel in there. I always did like fuchsia pink mixed with golden glitter. And so here's Uriel giving us these epiphanies, these brilliant ideas of, okay, well, this didn't go the way I wanted it to. What's my epiphany of how to fully take benefit of the way it did go?
Yeah. And what you're saying too, just when you keep mentioning colors, and especially with that reflection of the now, each time you say that, I see those colors and just want to remind people how life changing, on a pin, stopping to just breathe in a color. I mean, you disrupt the thoughts that are maybe going to spiral. and then lead to actions, God forbid, that really throw a situation out of control, particularly like if people are having a conflict or an argument and it's just, going to erupt, and then you can't take things back. And especially watch the, Mars and Virgo can be cutting words that, we can't put them back in our mouths. And so when we see that stuff coming up to stop, or feel like that change is like, whoa, why is this coming at me? To just breathe in those colors, it's huge. We all are light beings. And I can't stress that enough. It's not just some theoretical theme. There's a thing, and I don't want to sidetrack too much, but it's called a darkness retreat. And people have rooms that are custom built for darkness. And people go for, monks did it for months, and some old traditions, the first 9 years, of their lives. I mean, it's a really deep thing. But after 72 hours, the human brain starts to be able to actually see light and color in the room. And it's got to be a very specifically built structure, but it's a reminder, it's the, awareness, we are light. And we don't obviously always see that full spectrum in our regular date nights, circadian rhythms and everything, but we are that. And so that, go back to color, if you're in a moment, and work with the Archangel and that color, and just breathing it into your system till you feel calm again. And the other thing with the change, and I don't know, again, you've been reading for years too, and how often do we get clients saying, I'm not happy with this situation, and then change comes, and it's like, but I don't want to change my situation.
Right.
And it's like, well, maybe. And again, going to the Venus, what does your heart really desire? And if you connect with that core and a color and a feeling of what your soul is wanting to move towards, then it's not so hard to make that change or let go of something that's just really a source of unhappiness, or to begin to let go.
Right. So before we go to the nodes, I think that the concept of the nodes, of which I'm fascinated, I think that's a concept that maybe a lot of people don't understand or don't even know what we're talking about. So tell people what the nodes are, and then you can tell them about the whole, I think you said it was Aries, Leo?
Libra, yeah, they're
Libra, Aries,
shifting.
Leo. Yeah.
So this is, in Western astrology, we look at the 10 planets, moon is a planet, the sun is a planet in Western astrology, which may sound odd, as compared to astronomy, but we look at the nodes of the moon, and there's a lot of kind of carryover from Eastern astrology in terms of how Westerners interpret it. But the short of it is, the North Node, we think about our future or where our experience is leading us. And the South Node is our experience or talents we came in with, and, almost like old hat. And some of it's, no, I don't want to do that this way anymore. And what's interesting, so those nodes shift about every 18 months with the eclipses. And so we go through cycles, and the odd thing, unlike the other planets that we track, they move backwards. So they're moving from the Scorpio Taurus axis to the Aries Libra one. And this will be the North Node or future in Aries and the South in Libra. And that is a really interesting continuum, because Aries, we think of pioneering, where are we going to be really brave? The shadow side is, of course, not caring what anybody thinks, to the point of insensitivity. So it's opposite, or it's medicine, if we think about it, is Libra, which really wants that aesthetic, right? I mean, it's the sign that's symbolized by the scale. So it wants to be considerate of everyone in the room and find the balance, which of course is ever changing. So it's it's this elusive, quest to come in with some Libra aspects, but the decorum, the diplomacy, we're using the nice words, again, I guess it must be that Mars and Virgo coming up, that I'm like, yeah, remember. But so they're shifting, and that's where the eclipses in October are going to be, where we, get our final eclipse the 28th of October with the Scorpio aspect. And then we get more into this alignment of the cardinals. And so the big shift of going from fixed to cardinal on these eclipses, fixed is like, again, talk about this change thing, right? Nope, I do it this way. That's how I've always done it. And I'm not, I'm fixed, it is what it sounds like. And so for things that are integrity, that you can always count on someone for being there and being that quote rock, those things obviously are, endurance is a good thing. But where we're too rigid and too inflexible, the shift for things maybe we've been ruminating on for the last 18 months, or I would say even going back through the whole Saturn Aquarius transit, back to that. The cardinals are where we make the progress. We take the initial steps. They initiate each season. So if people who are not that familiar with astrology, if we think of the beginning of summer, that's the sun sign of Cancer. We think the beginning of the fall, that's Libra. The beginning of winter is Capricorn. The beginning of spring is Aries, of course. And so those are all what we call the cardinal or initiating signs. So if you've been thinking about something for a long time, this period that's opening up is where you get to kind of like the, similar to the energy at the beginning of the year, you actually, when Mercury goes back into Capricorn, one of those cardinals, you go, oh, wow. I keep seeing the images we're saying this of, I can't even really imagine how it felt, but when they actually put their feet on the moon, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, whoa, this is new. This is like completely foreign, but so exciting. And an accomplishment. And I'm now not just thinking about it, I'm actually, here, feet on the ground, doing it. So the things that people have maybe been, again, depending on that timeline, whether it's been these last 18 months where the eclipses and the nodes have been in the fixed energy, and maybe there have been blocks where people really couldn't move far. I got to finish school, or, I got to, whatever the thing is. Now it's going to be a period of, no, you actually get out there in the field and do it, and start taking those ideas and putting them, into practice, into your daily life. And it's so, in that sense, to me, it's very exciting, especially with the North one in Aries. I mean, that is the bold, adventuring sign that has the courage, that's mantras, just do it, right?
So I think you said these last about 18 months.
18,
so we're going to be
months.
in this all the way till like March of 2025.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
all next year.
Again, this makes the reflective time for me, just to jump back for a second, of December and where we're heading into the new year, all the more important, because we are starting a whole new adventure that's going to last us 18 months. And so I think that makes it really important for us to like be in this moment in space of this node change that's going to happen to us in October, or happen with us, not to us.
Yes.
Happen with us, as being something that we should be like going into with a hopeful heart, that we should be going in with this like, oh my God, the sky is the limit. Where do I want to go with this? What is my vision? A little bit of that for me is Gabrielle, because I think of Gabrielle as, first of all, she is the Archangel of communication, as we mentioned earlier, but she's also the Archangel of creativity and motivation. So it's like being motivated to create, to like take some sort of like, make a plan for this amazing time where the energy is changing. I'm presuming from Pisces, Virgo. Is that
From the fix. So no, it's been Scorpio,
Oh, Scorpio.
Taurus,
Scorpio, Taurus.
It's
Okay.
been in the fix because they move backwards, but yeah,
Oh, I see.
it's
Okay.
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 Between the two of us, like, yeah, that's what
Got it.
it's so much fun to do it with a fellow astrologer because I was getting Mercury backwards, and that's so it's always good.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
the other thing to note, these nodes actually change on the 17th of July on the new Cancer moon. And some of this won't be, out there posted yet. But remember, people can kind of tap into that. What I love about Cancer energy, not only is it, obviously one of our initiating signs, I just think there is a like a double meaning or another layer to um, the nodes actually shifting on the 17th of July under
Oh,
a
I had
new
this wrong.
Cancer
So this
moon.
is happening July
Well,
17th,
yeah,
not
so we'll
October.
get to, it's the eclipse that we'll get
Get
in
in October.
October.
Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
that's
sorry,
okay.
sorry.
No, no,
So
no.
it's through
Um,
to the end of 2024 then.
yes, 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 yes. And so, and I'd have to check early 2025 to see if because we get some transition area where one eclipse will be like this year in October, one will be still in the Scorpio, the last, and then the other one will be the Aries one at the just because of where they play out. So they're transitioning. The nodes themselves will definitely stay, but it's the eclipses that are still finishing a cycle of the fixed. So just to be clear, the eclipses are finishing out their fixed thing that will be the last one on October 28th. And then the nodes themselves are changing in the Cancer cycle, under the Cancer moon on July 17th. So the other part of that really resonated with what you were saying is I always find Cancer energy such like a beautiful, that nostalgic, heart-centered, what's really important in my heart. And we think of it as maybe nurturing or mothering. And so if you think of your little inventions that are going to be birthed during these next 18, 19 months, this time period, blessing them, as a mother would, with that it just wants to see you succeed. It wants to give its love, that archetype, is what I'm kind of tapping into. But also the heart, of course, is where we find that truth of what do we really desire? Where does the emotion of what it is live? And because that's such a strong proponent of what we actually manifest, right? Because if our heart's not in it, people will feel that not only, but we're just not going to be that motivated or dedicated. Whereas if we are connecting with that, going, no, this is truly what I want to do. I have tears when I think about it. It resonates so deeply. And then we know there's this cycle, this exciting cycle of getting to birth it. And it's these new little babies like your duck
right,
coming out into the world, and so there gets to be such a celebration of that. It's a new, a new one coming into the world, and all the people who will receive inspiration and guidance for that, in paths that you and I can't even know, when you get to put something like that out into the world.
right. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for this update. I really appreciate it. I know this is going to give people things to think about. And as you said, not just from the standpoint of if they happen to watch this when it drops, but anytime through the year, they'll be able to even look back and go, you know what, I'm looking back to July and going, I remember what that felt like for the nodes to change, or, oh, I'm listening to this for the first time in October. And it's like, oh, this is perfectly timely. I didn't know the eclipse was coming. So I think that's awesome. So tell people where they can find you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I'm feeling those people too. And I'm almost kind of, that little like giggle that we do. That's like, they're like, oh my God, that explains so much of what's been going on last few months. Or just like, it's not. So I'm grateful that we like get to give you the, the background of like, yeah, that's what was going on. And it's not just you. That's what was going on. You're going to be all right. You are okay. It's good. It's all going to work out. So they can find me at elizabethsoracle.co. there's a newsletter that comes out every other week. And so I break it down into
I read
cycles like,
religiously.
oh, it's, it's so heartwarming to just those connections with everybody and the way to stay connected. So they can sign up for that. And I made a special code for your audience through October 31st, because I knew this would be, live on in the
In the world.
internet. Yeah. So Ariel, if you use the code Ariel, you get 10% off whatever you feel guided. There's just different reading packages, and there are sound baths. There's a new sound bath because I have the bowls and I play Celtic harp. And so it's like a new endeavor for me. Speaking of new things. And so just 10% off and the code Ariel, and people can find that and just see if they want to check in. I can pull their chart and we can walk people through, which is one of my favorite things to do, because it's just pieces of your life or keys. And I've been doing astrology, God, at least 15 years, but when somebody takes a fresh look at my chart, they'll see something that even I hadn't noticed
Right.
or seen how that's working. So it's a beautiful thing we just get to share with each other, really. It's and help see where people are, see what transits are coming up. And then it's like you get a roadmap, and then we can, look at what's going on and then put it in that context and tell you where some of the guideposts are. It's probably the best way to think about it. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So again, that code is Ariel, Ariel. So thanks so much, Elizabeth. I'm so glad you could be here. It's been a blast.
Such a pleasure.
Yes.
Really so good to connect with you and the
No,
angels.
it has been way too long. So folks, also keep in mind that the event that I have that's coming up soonest is I'm doing a Celebrate Your Life event in Skamania. This is myself, John Holland, Colette Barron-Reed, Dougal Frazier. I mean, we are talking my dream team here. This is like my dream team. Lisa Williams will be there. Don't know her, but I hear she's wonderful. So it's just the 5 of us. So this is a magical event in the mountains of Oregon. Actually, I think it's technically Washington. You fly into Portland and drive 40 miles, and I think it's just on the other side of the Washington state. It's a gorgeous place. They're doing all kinds of special events like doing spiritual work with horses. There's an energetic photography class. You can even zip line if you want. You won't be doing that with me, but you might be with me for the psychic and horses stuff. So check it out. We'll put the link in the information with this particular video / podcast. So you've been listening to the Angel Tarot Show. Thanks so much for dropping by, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Sag and horses, really?
Right. Oh my God. Right. Yeah. Sag and horses. Yeah. I didn't even put that together, but you're right. Yes. Yes.
Much fun.
Much fun. All right, guys. See you soon.